Exams. Let's face it, nobody really likes them. Right now, we're in the middle of exam season and students are scrambling to get their grades in order so they can get into their dream colleges. But just around the corner lurks the boss. Today, we're talking about many students' worst nightmare, the IB. The International Baccalaureate, or more specifically the IB diploma, is a grueling 2-year course for high school students. Time magazine called it a rigorous, off-the-shelf curriculum recognized by universities around the world. Harvard professors have said that the IB helps students think critically, synthesize knowledge, reflect on their own thought processes, and get their feet wet in interdisciplinary thinking. A bunch of fancy words strung together to basically explain torture. The IB assessment processes for a final grade is divided into 5 sections. First, internal assessments. These are assignments and examinations that students complete in school for each of their 6 selected subjects, 3 at higher level and 3 at standard level. Performance on these internal assessments determines a predicted grade that a student is expected to achieve in a final exam. Then there's the extended essay. This is a 4,000-word in-depth research paper on a topic related to one of the 6 subjects that the student has deep interest in. Then there's theory of knowledge, a mandatory subject that supposedly expands your thinking and helps you understand why and how we learn, as it prompts you to ask questions like, to what extent do I exist? Also, there's CAS, creativity, activities like debate, art, or even chess, which allow you to unleash your inner creative beast, activity, physical activities, and service, giving back to the community. CAS is supposed to help balance the academic rigor of the IB. And finally, there's the main IB exams held in an invigilated, high-pressure setting which tests your knowledge of the subjects that you've studied. These 5 things ultimately determine a student's final grade. And just to make it a bit more complicated, the EE and TOK are marked as 1 and the CAS isn't marked. It's just something that you need to put in a number of hours into. Last year, the main IB exams, like most other exams, were cancelled because of COVID-19. The IB essentially said that it would be unsafe and unfair for students to sit the exams in the middle of a global pandemic. This was received well by most people, primarily students. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing. The IB got caught in a fracas over using AI-based systems that included a student's grades for assignments, teachers, predicted grades, and grades from past students at their school to predict and assign scores. But the algorithm resulted in many students receiving much lower scores than they were expecting. And this was unexplainable. After the IB was quite literally shamed by parents and students on social media platforms and received a lot of negative coverage, they eventually had to switch back to taking the internal assessments as the basis for marking. For an education system, this was some learning, and this year, the IB decided on a significantly different route. At the beginning of February, the IB announced that schools could choose between administering the exams or, quote, using a combination of internal assessment coursework and teacher-predicted grades. According to a recent IB update, 71% of IB schools around the world have said that they will be able to switch to administering the exams. That's where the controversy lies. Most students argue that sitting any sort of mass exam when we're still in the middle of a pandemic is pure idiocy. On top of this, students claim that online learning and a general uncertainty has prevented them from effective learning, which could possibly be detrimental to their final IB results. Finally, students are already struggling with their mental health as a result of the pandemic and online schooling. And the very thought of exams is just making the situation much worse. They want this year's exams to be scrapped entirely. On the other hand, though, the IB exams are actually pretty important for grading since predicted grades can actually be pretty inaccurate. In the last 5 years, less than half of predicted grades have fallen within 1 to 2 points of final grades, and almost 40% of students' grades were under-predicted. So, scrapping the exams could hurt students who might outperform their predictions. And this could also affect university entrances. Universities rely on grade point averages or exam results to determine a student's academic capability. This is especially true for the US, where most universities have gone test optional on standardized tests like the SAT and the ACT. If colleges are skeptical of IB results because the exams weren't even written in the first place, they might waste students relatively. If, historically, a college admits the top 1 or 2 students from a certain school, they'll still take those 1 or 2 students now. So, what can be done? First, students need to be heard. Most of the discussions happening right now are between teachers, schools, and the IB. Students aren't actually involved, even though they have the most to gain or lose. Students need to have a say in what is effectively a decision on their future. Second, the IB needs to decide a universal plan for the IB assessment to ensure fairness. They need to pick between the full exam or no exam, and not take the middle of the road. A decision to go ahead with the exams should include the school's student councils to determine the best possible way to do this. If the IB opts for no exams, then the IB needs to figure out a way to get predicted grades to be as accurate as possible and release specific public policies and guidelines for determining predicted grades in the most precise way. As torturous as the IB exams may seem, the IB needs to figure out a way to maintain the well-being of students while also ensuring that the results students obtain is as accurate as possible.